But imagine you had an agent, an assistant that was able to coordinate and work with all those other agents and was able to, you could ask it questions such as, you've looked at my category strategy for last year. What recommendations do you have? What opportunities do I have to improve? And it'll give you an answer based on the training you've given it within that specific category. It could be IT, marketing, logistics, whatever your role is, whatever you're working on that day. But the answers will also be based on which suppliers you're contracted with, your recent spend patterns, what's happening externally. So it's a live view, and it can even quantify the benefits, saying, well, here's a few opportunities. This is how you'd go about it. These are the benefits. And if you want, it'll scenario test it out for you. It'll give you an operational plan around how you then go to stakeholders and what else you need to do.
Yeah.
And that is a ton of work that we just don't have capacity for as a profession.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Today, we have the immense pleasure of being joined by one of the greatest minds in supply chain and certainly top in Europe, Shakil Nathoo. And Shakil is a partner with Kearney. And Kearney is absolutely renowned for their excellence in strategic operations consulting. So this is a great privilege. Shakil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure, Sean. Followed you on LinkedIn, and it's great to have a conversation with you on this topic. Close to my heart.
Brilliant. Yeah, likewise. I love that as we find like-minded leaders, thought leaders in the industry, that we start to meet each other and then get together and start to challenge each other's ideas to make them better. And that's one of my favorite things about it. I know I tend to think about some of the branding. And if we think about some of the top brands in the world, we can think about certain beverage companies that are always jockeying for who's first. But when I think about rankings and reputation, Kearney is still the top rated strategic operations and procurement supply chain consulting company in the world. What does that mean for people in procurement and supply chain? And what role does that mean Kearney plays?
Yeah, look, we've been going for almost 100 years now, and our foundation was strategic operations. So we've been going at this thing for a while. Specifically within procurement, we invented strategic sourcing in the 1980s, and we've had decades of uninterrupted continuous innovation since then. Purchasing chessboard, and our latest is around the application of generative AI within procurement. So for us, it's continue to innovate, attracting the right talent, doing interesting work with procurement leaders, and helping the rest come up to the standard, because procurement is still a relatively new function if you compare it to sales and marketing, finance and others. So we're still early in the maturity curve relatively. So our work is kind of showing the light, showing where the future is in procurement as a function, and helping organizations get there, whether that's through transformation around processes, the use of data, the right setup of the team, or ultimately helping to drive savings too.
Right on. And I think when somebody thinks about the concept of strategic sourcing, sometimes that bears a little bit of explanation if I can impose. I think there's probably out there that hears strategic sourcing and they go, what does that mean exactly?
So one of my educational backgrounds is in finance and accounting. So maybe I'll try and answer it through that lens.
Perfect.
If you look at a P&L of a company, you have your revenues and your costs. And your costs are largely, for most organizations, a lot of it's people, but then you also have third-party costs. And that might be for your manufacturing business, kind of direct. So materials you're buying or services you're buying that directly input into the goods that you sell. But even if you're not kind of having a manufacturing platform, you're still buying services that are used, whether that's kind of IT, marketing, HR, etc. So procurement is helping you optimize the value you get from that third-party spend. And sourcing is a specific set of steps that you take that helps you optimize that value. And that value, it might be cost, but it might be innovation or helping you improve sustainability. Depends on your organizational objectives. So it's an absolutely critical role that is a substantial chunk of your P&L driving value overall for the organization.
Absolutely. When I think about some of the high volume, low margin businesses, this is really where it's at, is having that very, very well managed. I was thinking about our conversation earlier, and you touched on it. artificial intelligence, everybody's talking about it, but the newer topic is evolving into agents. And there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of questions, a lot of ideas around what agents mean. Obviously, we launched Rio, so we have an opinion, and we're super excited about building this amazing team member. And this, I think, was part of our most engaging conversations was, what do agents mean and how are they going to help? What does this kind of automation bring us? But if we start with, what is an agent?
So by the way, can I just say I love the branding around Rio. It makes it feel very personable. The name, the look and feel, the colors, it's great. Even the tone in which Rio responds. So I love the branding around Rio. It feels very personable.
Love it.
I think that's important.
Yes.
That's important, Sean, because I can give you a very technical answer around cloud infrastructure, large language models, fine-tuning those, building your small language model, kind of procedural, and I can give you that technical answer. But actually, I think most people relate to the idea of an assistant. So think about it as an assistant that helps you prepare to do your work. So that might be, you might have an access to a physical assistant that helps you sift through your emails or contact people on your behalf or kind of set times in your diary. This is an assistant that does other things, right? And most people have now used Copilot or ChatGPT. So we know you can use it to draft emails, kind of refine outputs, do research out there. But when we're talking about enterprise agents, the difference is that we're using proprietary data.
Yes.
And it's trained on the expertise that you have within the institution, within the organization. That's the difference between the kind of agents you see in ChatGPT and you click down and you see different types of agents, the GPTs, versus an enterprise agent. It's finely tuned and able to access proprietary knowledge and data.
I think that context is super, super important. And the analogy of an assistant is brilliant. I know that there's a certain degree of anxiety among some that, oh my God, computers are coming to take our jobs. But I think we've been hearing that since the 80s when strategic sourcing was invented. And maybe in a sense it's true, but I tend to find that jobs evolve and change, and companies are still having a hard time hiring enough great candidates. So I'm expecting that we have quite some runway before people really genuinely need to fear with their jobs, as long as they're reading ahead and staying current and contributing to the momentum. Or as maybe we like to joke around with Rio, going with the flow. Because Rio is Spanish and Portuguese for river. Yeah. So when we think about agents or groups of agents and how folks can go with the flow to get the most out of this significant shift in technology and a new level of, whoa, computers can do that. What are you seeing as the path forward for organizations to make the most of this and help bring people along with it?
Well, look, the first thing, there is a lot of fear out there in terms of the agents are coming for us. They're going to take over our jobs.
These computer terminal things with green screens are coming for our jobs, Shakil.
Yeah.
Flashback, Back to the Future.
That's the fear. Look, some of that I actually welcome because most people I know in my organization, other consultants, but also in industry and really across sectors are overworked. Burnout's been a phenomenon for the last few years.
Oh my goodness.
There's nobody literally I know in procurement that is able to get their work done in 9 to 5, right? And boy, wouldn't we like to clock off and evening with our friends and family.
Yeah.
Right. So anything that helps us become more efficient, I think is welcome. And agents are able to do a couple of things. One is kind of do some of the legwork and get to draft stage or recommendation stage that then allows you to kind of step in and take the action, approve, review, action. But also, we are operating in, not to get too existential, but in one dimension at a time. The ability to parallelize yourself, that's a word, would be fabulous, wouldn't it? That while we're having this dialogue now, there's another version of Sean that's talking to somebody else about Rio. There's another version of Shakil that's answering questions about AI or another topic.
Yep. And
that could be through a repository of emails and knowledge that you have. It could be through a YouTube link of a talk that I've given. And it's able to ingest that and give a sensible answer. And so when we come off this call, we're like, okay, it's done that work. I just need to check it and sign off on it. So I think, let's not underestimate the potential it has to actually help us and support us.
Absolutely. If we think about the equivalent of manually washing dishes or a dishwasher or a washing machine for clothes, this was a massive leap forward in management of households. And I would see this as being a similar leap forward in the enterprise of automation of tasks that used to need to be very manually processed. And the outcome, because people today, when they're working, there's some organizations where the manufacturing planner or manufacturing manager for the shop floor, if they take 2 or 3 days off in a row, things start to go a bit sideways and their cell phone starts ringing. That to me is a great indication of a massive opportunity to improve the level of systemized consistency to go and solve problems and things that maybe used to be locked up in somebody's brain that need to be pushed down into those systems. Because as the agent learns from the, oh, I recommend this. No, do this other thing. Oh, I didn't. What? Why would you recommend that? What am I missing? It's very much like an intern. So when they start, they'll have lots of ideas. Some of those ideas would be massively destructive to the company because they're missing very important context. But they're still ideas. And the more effectively we can help those interns grow to become manufacturing managers, procurement directors, head of supply chain, these kinds of evolution and learning over time takes investment. And it takes quite a bit of time. But I think the best team members learn based on feedback. And I'm really excited about that capability to go and learn from recommendations that were made. And then, well, if it wasn't accepted, help me understand why.
Yeah. Let me pick up on this idea of kind of reducing manual effort and also thinking about as an intern that will learn over time. The difference is that interns then not going to leave your department or your company. Once you're trained, you've trained it.
Yeah, or even take washroom breaks. It just keeps going. It doesn't even sleep. It's working late tonight, Shakil. That means maybe you and I don't have to.
Yeah, it's kind of relentless. Although there is some new research that's come out to show that if you encourage the agents to pause and reflect, the outcomes are better, but we can get into that. On the kind of examples within procurement where, we see opportunity for reducing work and the kind of the intern analogy and the assistant, let's pick a classic process that, most procurement functions have in one form or another, and that's the kind of 7-step sourcing process. We call it 7-step because, we invented it and then we call it, but some companies will have it 6 steps or 8 steps. But the idea that you start with your kind of business requirements, you do analysis around your future needs, what's in the market, test the market, come up with a strategy for that category or pool of spend, and then execute against that strategy. And every category manager has a version of that process, and most do it, update that process on an annual basis, develop their category strategy document. It's a ton of work because you need to look at external market data, internal data, go talk to a bunch of stakeholders, test the market, look at your strategy from last year. Is it relevant? What's happening in the future? How do you shift your balance of power? So it's not a trivial exercise, and that's why it's done infrequently. But when you think about it, things change in the market all the time. Suppliers do deals with competitors, suppliers close down, get acquired. Your internal company strategy may change, you'll release new products. And so why is it that our strategy is updated once a year? What if it could be updated on a daily basis? Now, if a human was doing that, it's kind of impractical, right? Because we have BAU activities that fill our time. We can't always kind of be sitting back and thinking strategy. But there is a world where you have agents that do bits of that strategy for you. So you have agents that, can look at your spend data and tidy it up and clean it up for you. You've got agents that look in your contract and understand who you're contracted with, on what terms, when they're expiring, what the unlocked value is in there. Have you realized the full value against your invoices or not? What's the negotiation opportunity when it comes time for renewal? You've got external facing market agents that for commodities are looking at what's happening in the commodity market, are tracking suppliers. And so all of those pieces are useful, and they all exist, by the way. So these agents already exist. They're built, they're up and running, and they're ready. But imagine you had an agent, an assistant that was able to coordinate and work with all those other agents and was able to, you could ask it questions such as, you've looked at my category strategy for last year. What recommendations do you have? What opportunities do I have to improve? And it'll give you an answer based on the training you've given it within that specific category. It could be IT, marketing, logistics, whatever your role is, whatever you're working on that day. The answers will also be based on which suppliers you're contracted with, your recent spend patterns, what's happening externally. So it's a live view And it can even quantify the benefits, saying, well, here's a few opportunities. This is how you'd go about it. These are the benefits. And if you want, it'll scenario test it out for you. It'll give you an operational plan around how you then go to stakeholders and what else you need to do. And that is a ton of work that we just don't have capacity for as a profession. Right?
Yeah.
But imagine
it's the difference of done good enough and done well. And sometimes that extra effort, it's like going from a B to an A in school. That extra effort, if you've already been up until 3 a.m., you're just out of time.
Yeah. You're out of time. And frankly, sometimes the time to decision making, the time to value from something happening to you taking a decision and your company realizing that value, that can make or break your year, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think about some of the organizations that have responded exceptionally well to strategic changes or large shifts in the market. If we think about the traditional mantra of keep prices down, one of my favorite examples was a few years ago during a significant supply chain crisis where supply was heavily constrained. All of these companies in this industry were saying, keep your prices down except one. They said, I don't care about the price, ship me double. Fast forward 2 years, guess who had the market share? Because they had product to sell. And to me, this is the beautiful example of procurement and strategic sourcing versus purchasing as a low level, keep price down, as opposed to thinking about it more strategically in the context and the opportunities. And if you've got the product that nobody else does, well, guess who the customers are going to buy from? And that top line view is so, so powerful. I think that brings us into that topic of adoption, right? So we have these tools, and even today, the number of people that we would talk to that are vaguely aware of what a GPT is, and the number of people who haven't yet tried one is actually strikingly large. So as we consider this idea that you've got, selfishly, in my view of the world, kind of Rio and friends that are there helping make things happen for organizations, what are you seeing for adoption? And I know we share a passion around what unlocks it, but what are you seeing around adoption in early successes for agents being adopted well?
Yeah. So essentially, right now, I see corporations falling into two camps. There's one which is kind of, this is cool. We need to let everybody have access to it. This is a kind of democratic kind of view of how to deal with these AI developments. So let's get everybody access to Copilot. Let's give everybody access to LLMs. Let's get some data scientists in the team and kind of let the team brainstorm and do a hackathon and come up with use cases and 1,000 flowers will bloom. That's one philosophy. And I like that a lot, actually, because I think, one of the key things around AI is just a general capability uplift that we all need. So I think from education and better understanding benefit, I think that's a great way to do it. There's another camp, which is much more top down, and that says we're going to drive a huge transformation in our procurement and supply chain functions. We're going to realize more value. We're going to do it more efficiently. And in those cases, tendency tends to be start with a business case, identify the tech, and go build it. And then invariably, what happens, and this has happened multiple times, it's not just new with AI, it also has been happening with digital procurement for a number of years. What invariably happens, about 18 months, 2 years into the program, we get a call and saying, hey, we're 2 years in, but we're not quite seeing the metrics we expected. So we go in and do a health check across all the dimensions. Did you set the right vision, the right outcome? Did you communicate it well? Have you chosen the right technologies? Have you gone about it in the right way in terms of the use cases? And then are you seeing the adoption, right? Is it landing? What's the uptake? And typically it's at that point that you figure out something's gone wrong when you don't see the uptake. And the number one cause in procurement transformations, whether it's digital or AI, is nobody thought about the design and the user sufficiently upfront. It's been kind of build it, and then we'll do change management. Like it's a separate work stream. We'll train them.
Yeah. Training and change management is that universal bar at the bottom of every large business transformation program, and no one knows what the hell it means. But we're doing it somehow, some way. How? We're going to talk to people and communicate stuff?
And the answer is not that. The answer,
exactly.
the answer is one, If you want high adoption, the answer is brilliant design. Think about your
Yeah.
users, think about what you need,
Yeah.
and make a world-class design. It's not hard to do. Because once you get that, your just baseline is way higher. Then you can do more advanced things like track user behavior. How are they interacting with the system? Where are they getting stuck? For a small group of users, do like an experiment where you track their mouse movements for a week. Where are they falling off the process? Where did they spend too long? Or did they switch their email because they got too frustrated with that solution, right? And then do a feedback loop, right, into the development team. Okay, we need an intervention. There's too many people falling out this process. So that gets you from 80 to 90 to 95%. If you're kind of building something and saying, yeah, we'll do some change management, your baseline's like 20, 30%.
100% agree. It's exactly the difference, whether it's procurement transformation or ERP transformation or any other transformation. When it comes from on high with an attitude of you're going to use it because you work for us and we told you to, it usually gets about the excitement of filing your taxes. Because then you have to file them because we told you so. And guess what? There's consequences if you don't. As opposed to, hey, this is going to help you, and it's a joke, and it's funny, as opposed to the joke that you have to explain, that's less so. When we see the empathy up front, and empathy is a funny word to hear in the context of strategic sourcing and operations optimization, but it is so critical because it unlocks that human factor that is so important. And I think this really comes back with agents as we consider the experience with and the design with an agent. They're fundamentally a team member. And if your experience, having worked in some organizations, is that guy that everyone can't wait till they leave, then, Clippy's got to go, because these unhelpful suggestions at the wrong time just are not helpful. And Clippy 2.0 is not going to be the co-pilot or the agent or the companion for folks that we want. So there's a lot to learn from, and I 100% agree. The inspection of how people are using it is often where the biggest unlocks are, because people will tell you what they think it does, and they will tell you, but they can only really communicate that as a requirement from the perspective and experience and context and range of imagination that they're coming into the experience with. And that is often one of those things that when you, to your point, go and watch them, and you have somebody that's watching for the things they don't know how to share because they didn't know it was possible, they didn't know it was they didn't know computers could do that, or they didn't know to ask for it, or they thought that there was a rule from 10 years ago that said, no, you can't do that. Well, that rule might have been true 10 years ago, but it might not be true anymore. And all of those things can get in the way of somebody adopting stuff. And if you're building something internally, they can also get in the way of how it's designed. And that requirements gathering, as opposed to idea gathering, and now how do we make it super smooth and easy? Massive, massive gap that is unfortunately being leveraged as a missed opportunity. Left on the table.
I agree with you. And part of, what I do and what we do at Kearney is help organizations who are in those types of transformations, help them understand that user centricity, kind of user back design, UX, they are disciplines that exist, right? Kearney, we've got teams that do that. We've made acquisitions around that space. But so there's not a mystery. It's just that it's not baked into programs that are kind of enterprise and IT-led, typically. That thinking is often not there. But, from the consumer space, we know what it feels like when somebody's thought about that. We know the apps that we use, that we like to use, because they've thought about it in that way. It's just a question of getting that capability onto enterprise teams.
100%. Grandma still doesn't know how to program the VCR, but she knows how to get her email, and she can FaceTime you. And that's a beautiful, beautiful contrast. Shakil, I love the way that you keep helping organizations with strategic operations and stronger supply chain and procurement. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll say that again. It's been an absolute pleasure, Sean. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And for all of you watching, this has been another edition of Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. It's that never-ending climb. We'll see you again next week. Thanks, everyone.